These are my favorite surprise endings in the world of horror. That movie is a shit show. What you think you see, what you think you hear, that's what it's about. It's all theater of the mind. No, it's garbage. It's garbage. Mood and atmosphere. Now that I really like. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to see. Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. Yes, that's right. In this video, I want to give you my top 10 favorite surprise endings in the world of horror movies. Now, before I begin, let me preface this video by saying these couple of things. My list is a list of mostly the mainstream horror movies that we know and love, okay? I mean, I could have dove deep into the Hammer films and a lot of the foreign films, but, you know, for the sake of having everybody sort of on the same page, I decided to do more of the mainstream American horror films that we know and love. Although I will say that I think there is one foreign film on my list, one or two, but you'll know it immediately. So the Hammer films and the Italian films, and that's a whole other thing that, you know, whole other thing right there. So yeah, and the other thing is that when I approached this list, what I was keeping in mind was how I sort of came to this list was I chose movies that, number one, either genuinely surprised me. You know, at the end of the movie, on first watch, I was like, oh, I fucking didn't even see that coming. That's good, right? And number two, maybe I sort of thought they were going that way, and they did go that way, but it didn't matter because it's so good that the impact is still just as great. Do you know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, I thought they were going to do that, and they did do that, and it's still fucking awesome. Do you know what I mean? So those are the two kind of things that I kept in mind when compiling this list. Now, I could have easily compiled a list of like 30 or 40 films, but to keep things concise and on track and, you know, not a 90-minute video, I just compiled a top 10 list. Now, this is my top 10. Your top 10 could vary and be a bit different. Your number one could also be very different, okay? This is not the gospel. This is just sort of off the top of my head of movies that genuinely surprised me in the world of horror in one way or another. So let's get right to it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Sitting at number 10 is The Others, starring Nicole Kidman from 2001. I saw this movie in the theater twice, actually. I think I went to see it with my mom, and then I took my buddy Bruce to go see it as well. And we loved it. We thought it was great. Now, this is a movie that I think, you know, it came out 2 years after The Sixth Sense, and the ending to The Sixth Sense has a very similar ending to The Others, okay? In the sense of, oh, they're actually, it's the reverse of what you kind of expect. So when The Others came out, I remember that it got a lot of sort of, you know, shitty kind of response in some circles because they felt that they were ripping off The Sixth Sense, which I never felt that way at all. To be honest with you, I like The Others better than The Sixth Sense. I think it's a better movie. I like The Sixth Sense, but I love The Others. And so I was genuinely surprised. I can't remember if there was a moment where I thought, maybe? There might have been a moment where I thought that, but the ending was still like, oh, that's so good. So they're the others. Oh, not the, oh. And of course, when you watch the movie and you know what to look for, there are specific clues that do allude to that. And of course, the mood is great and the atmosphere is great, right? You know what I mean? And the tension. And it's just a really well-made, well-directed, well-shot, spooky little ghost story. And with an ending that genuinely surprises you, especially if you haven't seen the movie and maybe you're not even aware of the movie. So definitely that is my number 10. Love The Others, and it genuinely surprised me. All right, number 9, ladies and gentlemen, on this list is, drum roll please, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This is an iconic ending, not just in the Halloween franchise, but probably one of the most iconic, surprising endings in the world of horror. And of course, that is when Michael Myers is presumed dead, and they go back to the house, and everything's calm, cool, and collected. And then we see this mask come over the camera again. That's probably an optical effect. I don't think they actually put a mask over the camera. And then, of course, we find out that it's actually Jamie and not Michael Myers. And oh my God, there it is. There she is with the knife. And Dr. Loomis going, no, no. I mean, it's just like, oh, fuck. Like, it was so surprising. Now, I mean, I was 9 when this movie came out, so I can't remember in any great detail what my first initial thought was when I saw it. I didn't see it in the theater. I think I saw it a year later when it came out on VHS. But I remember being like, oh my God. Of course, that was back in the day when there was no internet and, you couldn't, jump online and get spoiled, right? So I had no idea what to expect. So genuinely, to this day, one of the most surprising, iconic shots and ending in horror, because it leaves you with that thought of, oh my God, no. Oh no, we just got, and then fuck, and you could see the pain in Dr. Loomis's face, right? No. Can you imagine if he shot her? Can you imagine? Oh, I just thought of that. Can you imagine how awesome? I mean, it probably would have raised quite a few eyebrows, and I'm pretty sure the MPAA might have had something to say about that. But nonetheless, can you imagine how intense that would have been if Dr. Loomis actually pulled the trigger and Meeker didn't get to him in time? So it was, no, and you see Jamie going, can you imagine how fucking intense that would be, shooting like an 8-year-old child? Oh my God, that'd be... Woo! That just adds a whole other layer onto that ending that would have been, wow, okay, they didn't see that coming. But anyway, yeah, that is my number 9. So, my number 8 most surprising ending in the world of horror is High Tension, or also known as Switchblade Romance. Now, this is a foreign film. This is a French film released in 2003. And I remember renting this from the video store back in the day and watching it. And of course, when you get to that ending, when you realize, oh, so it's all in, I didn't see it coming. Now, in subsequent rewatches, when you watch the movie, again, there's subtle clues that allude to that, obviously, right? But at first watch, I was like, oh my God, that's so good. Now, of course, it's subtitled. So if you're not into I don't know if you can, is there a dubbed version? I'm not sure if there's a dubbed version. The version I watched was subtitled. But anyway, so yeah, I love it. It's one of my, not just one of my favorite surprise endings in a horror film, but one of my favorite horror movies, period. I think the tension and the creepiness to that movie is at times genuinely unsettling. And of course, I love the psychological layers that the filmmakers were playing with and implement, because it just makes it feel much more rich and fulfilled by the time you get to the end of the movie, and a lot more mature and grounded, right? Smart, right? Oh, so it's not just it actually has some of the blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to be a little vague in case there's some people that haven't seen it, but the movie's nearly 20 years old now. So, I mean, if I spoil some things here, sorry, come on. Most of the movies here are quite old. So, not old, but, not the last 10 years at least. At least I don't think so. No. So anyway, yeah, okay, so that is definitely my number 8, High Tension. Awesome fucking movie. All right, let's get to my number 7. And my number 7 most surprising ending would definitely be Sleepaway Camp. Now, Sleepaway Camp is not a movie that I watch on a regular basis. It's far too cheesy to me. It's a little too, I don't know. It's a little too low budget for me. And you could say the same thing about a lot of horror movies in the early 1980s. But there's just something about Sleepaway Camp just doesn't have the rewatch value to me as something like a Friday the 13th or a Friday the 13th 2 or even 3 or 4 or Elm Street 1 or 2. Sleepaway Camp, like once you know that shocking ending, it just, I don't know, for me it makes it kind of takes away from watching it over and over and over again. But that doesn't mean that the ending isn't genuinely surprising. And by the end of the movie, you're like, oh shit. I mean, obviously everybody knows about it now, but when you're watching it for the first time like I did when I was like 10 or 11, I remember thinking, does she have a fucking penis? She's a fucking penis. Why is she so hairy? What the hell's going on here? It was like, oh my God, she's a guy. You know what I mean? It's like, holy fucking shit. So, yeah, I mean, that definitely was genuinely surprising, especially to a 10-year-old Dave McRae. So that is definitely my number 7. My number 6th most surprising ending in the world of horror, ladies and gentlemen, is 2004's Saw, directed by James Wan. A lot of people forget that because, of course, he really shot to stardom with The Conjuring and Insidious and Aquaman, and but he began his roots into the mainstream with the very first Saw from 2004. Now, he actually did a short film. I forget how long it was, maybe 20 minutes or so. He did a short film. There's you might be able to actually see it online. He did a short concept film. Kind of like, I guess, sort of what we're doing with It's Me, Billy. But he did a short concept film for Saw. And then, of course, he used that to help, gain interest into actually doing the feature film. But anyway, that's a little bit of an anecdote that is irrelevant. Yes, Saw, the ending to Saw, I went to the theater to see Saw. And that is one of those endings where when Jigsaw gets up from the... Spoiler alert, but I think everybody fucking knows this now. When he gets up from the ground and leaves the guys and then just closes that door, it's like the answer the whole time was lying in the middle of the fucking floor. Dude fucking owned your ass. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw it coming. I mean, when I watch it in subsequent, when I watch the movie again, I should say, there's a couple of things that I think, maybe that might be a tip-off. But for the most part, it's a solid, locked, sealed film that doesn't ever really allude that the whole mastermind behind all this is actually alive, lying in the middle of the floor. And I think that was awesome. To this day, it's one of my favorite horror movies, period. The first Saw. I'm not a big fan of the sequels. 2 was okay because it was just interesting to kind of revisit that premise again, right? Playing a game and having to do this, and if you don't do that, you're gonna die. Revisiting that kind of premise. Anytime you have that kind of premise in a horror movie, it's always interesting because it's an interesting premise. And if it's executed correctly and well, then it can be kind of fun. So I enjoyed Saw 2, but once they got to 3 and 4, I think I saw 4 in the theater, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm out. I'm done. Like, I've been here, done this, I've seen this, and now I'm done. It's the novelty has worn off for me. But that first Saw was different, new. That obviously spawned the torture porn kind of mid-2000s era of Saw and Hostel and, Saw 2 and Hostel 2. And there were a few films in there where that torture porn was kind of back a bit, but it was very realistically done, right? So yeah, really surprise ending, one of my favorites of all time. So that was what? That was number 6, right? Number 5, my 5th most surprising ending in horror is, ladies and gentlemen, The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining from 1980. Not only is this one of my favorite psychological horror films of all time, the layers in that movie are like a 20-story birthday cake. I mean, there's so many layers in that movie. There's so many different ways to interpret that film and the different levels of meaning in that movie. that you could literally go on and on and on and on. I mean, there's videos on YouTube, and there's a documentary about all the different sort of psychological layers that have been interpreted in that film. And there's some truth to a lot of those things as well, because of the how much of a perfectionist and how much of a detailed sort of layered filmmaker and director Stanley Kubrick was. So although you can see things that are not there and you can overdo it, those who analyze The Shining and Kubrick films in general are not, they're not crazy. I mean, Kubrick does put a lot of layers and a lot of shit in his movies. You can go overboard, yes, you can see things that are certainly not there, but you can see a lot of things that are intentionally there as well. So, and the ending to that movie is just like, oh, no way. Like now that's a movie that definitely, if you watch it and you know what to look for, they do allude to that potentiality, right? But when you get to the ending, it still doesn't make the ending any less impactful, right? You watch and you're like, oh my God, so that makes sense. So that's why he was called the caretaker. And okay, like I just love it. And like that's a movie I could watch over and over. Not just because of the layers, but because of the cinematography and the pensive sort of slow burn, the mood, the atmosphere. And every time I watch that movie, I feel like I'm discovering something more. And when I get to the ending, even though the ending is the same thing, I feel sort of like I've discovered something more meaning about the ending because of the little things that I'm beginning to pick up even on subsequent viewings, if you know what I'm saying. So it's iconic. I mean, not necessarily a surprise like The Others or like Saw, but definitely, oh, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm just an awesome ending. Okay, number 4 on my list is, ladies and gentlemen, Black Christmas from 1974. Good Canadian movie, for those of you that don't know. Shot right here in Toronto. And of course, my buddy Bruce and I are in development right now on a short Black Christmas fan film called It's Me, Billy. And there aren't really any Black Christmas fan films online. We might be one of the first, believe it or not. So, and this is a legit fan film that we are going to do, and it acts as a sequel to that film set 45 years later. So we are very excited about this. A lot more information is going to be coming out in the weeks and months. If you want to keep up to date, follow the Facebook page, facebook.com/itsmebillyfilm. I will put the link in the description. So anyway, yeah, my number 4 is Black Christmas from 1974. This is one of the earliest slasher movies, if you will. It precedes Halloween by 4 years. And this is an ending. Look, if you've seen the original Black Christmas, you know why it's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. You know why I've decided to do a sequel fan film to it. It is right up my alley in terms of the theater of the mind and the mood and the atmosphere and the slow burn and keeping the main antagonist ambiguous. And we never find out who he is. We never find out who Billy is or what his true motivations really are. I mean, if you listen to Bob Clark, the director of the movie, you can get some insight. And certainly if you pay close attention to many of the things that Billy is saying on the phone, you can sort of maybe piece some things together. But at the end of the day, it's all speculation. And so we really don't know who he is or why he's there or why he's doing what he's doing, other than the fact that he's fucking insane. And I love how at the ending, spoiler alert, the cops think that Peter was the one doing, the whole thing. And because Jess is sedated, she can't, and she thinks he was the one as well, right? So even if Jess was alive, she would still say, oh yes, it was Peter. It was because she was convinced that it was Peter doing it all. And there's reasons for that. But it wasn't. And what an iconic ending where Jess is lying in the bed and then we pull out, right? And we just see the house and the phone ringing, and they still never discovered Claire in the attic. And they didn't discover the house mother either. They're still both in the attic, and we're pulling away from the house, and you just see, Claire's face still with the bag over her head. No music, just the phone ringing, the credits rolling. It's like, what the fuck? That's not a nice ending. That's a very dark, black sort of ending, right? In terms of being very dark and Black Christmas, right? It's not a good ending at all. So it surprised me when I first watched it. Not that there's not a surprise in the sense of a twist, but it's more of a surprise in the sense of, oh, they're just ending it. Like, wow, that's dark. That's like, what happened? Like, shit, he's fucking still in the house and they never even found the other people in the attic. Claire is still there. And it's like, holy shit, right? So definitely one of my favorite surprise, if you will, endings in horror. And I say surprise, again, not because it's a twist surprise, but just where they sort of decided to cap it off and leave it off. It's kind of like, oh, wow, yeah, that's dark. That puts the black in Black Christmas, right? You know what I mean? So definitely one of my favorites of all time. Okay, my number 3 most surprise ending in horror is the original Friday the 13th from 1980. Now, there is no doubt that this is definitely an iconic ending in the world of horror, especially when we talk about slasher films. I mean, just that screen capture of young Jason leaping out of the lake and attacking Alice and pulling Alice into Crystal Lake with him under the water is iconic. And nobody saw it coming. In 1980, nobody saw that coming because the way they set up that movie, it was clearly defined by the time you get to the end of the movie that, oh, okay, so Pamela Voorhees is the main antagonist. She was the one creeping around the camp at night. Help me, help me. I mean, that was fucking creepy and weird, but it's set up that way, right? At no point in time did you actually expect Jason to come leaping out of the lake, because it's not like they ever alluded to it, or that they alluded to something weird in the lake. It's not like we had any underwater POV shots, or there was a moment where Kevin Bacon was on the dock and he saw something weird in the water. Like the lake was just a lake, right? It was just a lake. So when you see him coming out of the lake at the end, it was like, oh, did not see that happening. Do you know what I mean? Was it a dream? Was it not a dream? So anyway, yeah, definitely one of the most iconic endings in horror history for sure. One of my favorites. Okay, my number 2 most iconic surprise ending. This may surprise a lot of you. But that it's not actually my number 1. But, it can dip into number 1 depending on how I'm feeling, depending on the day, the time of year, who knows, right? But as of right now, my number 2 is the original Halloween from 1978. Now, I know that means a lot of you are thinking, what? I thought that was going to be your number 1, Dave. I thought that was going to be your number 1. What the hell could be his number 1? What could be his number 1? If that's not his number 1, what is his number 1? Ooh, I sound like fucking Scooby-Doo. Anyway, so yeah, the original Halloween is not only my number 2, but it is one of the most iconic surprise endings in horror and motion picture history. I mean, the moment when Dr. Loomis looks over the balcony and sees that he's gone, it's like, oh shit. It brings it all home. The message of that movie is clearly defined at that very moment. Do you know what I mean? And also in the seconds leading up to that, when Laurie says, it was the boogeyman. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is what she is saying. It was the boogeyman. She's making a statement. It was the boogeyman. This is confirmed in the actual Halloween script, which you can download online for free. And Jamie Lee Curtis and John Carpenter himself have also confirmed this as well. And about 8 or 9 months ago, maybe actually a bit longer ago, I did a video on my channel where I talked about this exact thing, and I walked you through why it sounds like she's saying, was the boogeyman? Was it the boogeyman? Was it the boogeyman? I mean, there's reasons why it's muddled, but she's actually saying it was the boogeyman. She's making a statement like, oh my God, it was the boogeyman. Tommy was right. And then Donald Pleasance caps it off with, as a matter of fact, it was. Do you know what I'm saying? And the reason why you don't really hear the it in her statement is because the it part bleeds into the word was. She's lost in her performance, and instead of going, it was the boogeyman, really clearly, she goes, it was the boogeyman, like that, right? And it can sound a bit muddled, but that is what she's saying. It's in the script. Carpenter confirmed it. Curtis confirmed it. It makes sense that she would say it was the boogeyman. And Dr. Loomis says, as a matter of fact, it was. And he looks over and he's gone. It brings the whole message of the entire movie home. So anyway, that's a little anecdote thing aside. So yeah, it is my number 2, but it's not because it couldn't easily be my number 1. It absolutely could be my number 1. It is iconic in its own right. And sometimes it dips into my number 1 spot 100%. But I can't really talk about why it's not my number 1 without talking about my number 1. So let's talk about my number 1 and kind of bounce back and forth a bit here. My number 1 surprise ending of all time. Again, this is taken with a grain of salt. Sometimes things can dip and out, right? But absolutely, this is iconic. I get goosebumps every time I watch this movie. I did not see it coming at all. And that is 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, starring Donald Sutherland, starring Leonard Nimoy, starring Jeff Goldblum, starring Art Hindle. I mean, this is an iconic film. It gets better with age. Like, it's just the mood and the atmosphere and the creepiness of the grittiness of the 70s horror. My girlfriend is not a big fan of horror, and she loved that movie. I reluctantly showed it to her one evening about, I don't know, 2 years ago or so. And to my surprise, she loved it. And I was like, wow, you're really doing that's fucking awesome. You know what I'm saying? But the reason why this is my number 1 is because there was no inkling at all that this was going to happen. Matthew, the character that Donald Sutherland plays, the main protagonist, there was no inkling that this was going to happen. Through the entire movie, he was calm, cool, collected, right? He sort of knew what to do. You felt a sense of security with him. You felt a sense of leadership from him. Do you know what I'm saying? And because they had to blend in with all the other, you know, people that had been compromised. I'm trying not to give it away, even though it's nearly 40 years old. It's 41 years old now. You should have seen it by now. But they had to be stoic, not show any emotion through all the times that he was okay, right? So they had to blend in and not show any emotion anyway. So when it got to the end of the movie and he leaves his office and walks out into the hallway and is walking down the hallway with all the other people that had been compromised, and he's stoic and straight, you know, walking like this, you don't think anything of it. You think he's just doing what he's been doing, right? And then when it gets to that final shot where there's that girl, it's like, Matthew, like, you know, like, hey, what's going on? I'm here. You know, I made it kind of thing, right? Oh my God, you did too. Oh my God, that's awesome. And he turns around like this. You're expecting him to be like, oh, hey, oh my God, you know, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not that kind of emotion, but just kind of like, hey, you know, what's going on kind of thing, right? And instead he just looks at her and goes, it's like, oh my God, no way. Like nobody saw it coming because it's like, oh, no way they got him. He was so brilliant at, you know, maneuvering in and out and finding the right things to do and getting away from everybody that it's like, oh, they got him. No fucking way. And if they got him, we're all fucked. Do you know what I mean? We're all fucked. That girl is fucked. You know what I mean? And then, of course, the movie just ends with the camera zooming up on his mouth and it cuts to black and that's it. And it gives me goosebumps every time. Just to see him like this. It's like, oh, no way. You were the symbol of strength through this entire movie of hope. It's gone. It's gone. It's all gone. You know, and that was awesome. So that's why it's my number 1, is because there really was no at all telling that this was going to happen. Like, you thought that it would end somehow, like something else was going to happen, right? With Halloween, even though nobody necessarily suspected that he would be gone, because he's the boogeyman and because he's the antagonist and because he's been sort of that kind of there, not there through the entire movie, when you see the movie, although it's surprising, it's not unexpected in relation to Michael's character. Do you know what I mean? It's still surprising, especially if you're watching it for the first time in 1978. But it's still, when you think about it more, you're like, well, it makes sense to his character and the clues that have been leading up to that moment. In Invasion of the Body Snatchers, nobody saw that fucking coming. It was like, what the hell? Like, oh my God. And the brilliant move to have him, like, he's there at the desk, right? And then he kind of goes like this, and he looks over, like, he just kind of seems normal, and he looks over and he sees everybody walking in the hallway, and he's just like, and he gets up, and you just think he's doing what he's been doing the entire movie. No. It's like, oh, fuck, no way. So that is why it's my number one. That is why Halloween is my number two. But again, depending on the time of year, depending on how I'm feeling, Halloween might slip into number one, knocking Invasion to number two, or whatever it is. But yeah, that's my justification for it right now at the very least. So anyways, folks, that is my top 10 list of surprising horror endings. Now again, I could easily do a top 15 or a top 20 list. I mean, films like Identity could be on there. Films like April Fool's Day could be on there. The reason why the ending of the first Elm Street is not on there is because it's not really surprising per se. It's a bit of a jump scare, but there's nothing really surprising about the ending. It's a cool ending, but not necessarily surprising. So we're talking genuine, oh, did not see that coming kind of endings. And I could easily do probably a top 20, but those are my top 10, kind of how I'm feeling right now in terms of the mainstream sort of horror that we're accustomed to. So anyways, yeah, my name's Dave McRae. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. What is your top 10 most surprising horror endings? Comment below and let me know. I would love to know. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can at facebook.com/manythingsdavemcrae. The link is in the description. That's where I tend to post in the meantime and in between time when I'm not posting here. Links to all my other social media is down there as well, including my official website. And don't forget to also, if you want to follow the news and updates on the Black Christmas fan film, It's Me, Billy, the official Facebook page is down there as well. And we're thinking about other social media as well. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, until next time, I will talk to you guys soon. Cheers.